Grand Rising. Good morning, big friends, and welcome to the Parinama practice space. And this is where we are building a space to create a practice where we are uniting our cognition with our emotion and our reflex. So today's topic is a continuation on the theme of there is nothing wrong with you. And what we will do today is we will be looking at the so-called shadows of ourselves. So I'm Katie Bickford. I used to be an executive. I built teams all over the world. And now I am the author, the co-creator, and founder of the Parinoma method. So before we get into it, let's just take a breath together. So join me for just a inhale through the nose and hold it now down through the bottom. And then exhale, like blowing out the candle. And one tool, if we're using our breath to regulate our nervous system, is to just simply know that an inhale is a function that activates our sympathetic nervous system, which is the activating aspect and the taking action part of ourselves. And the exhale works in concert with the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest, relaxation, and restoration. And why is it important to know that? Because you can use the breath to actually either give you energy or to relax yourself. So if you're looking to build a little bit more energy, it's taking bigger inhales, like take a deep breath. Because sometimes people will say, if somebody's stressed out, they'll say, like, take a big breath, which is probably better than not taking a breath. But that ultimately, if we're using the breath to really tune and tone our nervous system, that we emphasize the exhale to relax ourselves. So we can even like you take a big breath and you can feel that energizing, and then taking a long exhale and feel the releasing aspect of that. And these are simple tools that we can use. There's a lot, we don't need to, we can, through this process, we will develop increasingly more sophisticated practices, but just these foundational techniques, like even just checking in with ourselves, doing the, 1 through 10, how do I feel physically? 1 through 10, just to make it, just to notice. 1 through 10, how am I feeling emotionally? Just to notice. And then 1 through 10, check in, how do I feel mentally? And just take note. So let's get into it. Now, you may possibly be wondering why I'm here on a Friday, and because these are scheduled technically for Tuesday through Thursday, and it is because this is third time's a charm on this topic. I have tried 3 times, and I have continued to optimize the presentation and even the ordering. So hopefully this is the one where I landed. If not, we're going back on Tuesday. If I do land this today in of the shadows, we will talk about nervous system capacity, aka nervous system regulation, on Tuesday. So let's get into it. So here's what you have to look forward to. So there is nothing wrong with you. Your nervous system and behavior patterns are adapted to old conditions and experiences. So what you have to look forward to in this session, we're going to talk about the mechanism of pattern creation. We're going to talk about the chronological formation of the different facets of the nervous system. And then we are going to look at the shadows together. So I'm going to pop up here in the screen. There's nothing wrong with you. The shadows. So there's nothing wrong with you. Our nervous system creates our general sense of how it feels and our sense of what it means to be alive. And its default foundational settings are built over the first 25 years of life. You were not born with a complete nervous system. It was built over the first 25 years of life. And there are finite stages of development where the foundation for the various facets of our identity and lived experience are formed. So all impacted disproportionately by the events and circumstances during our initial development. So one way to point to this is as far as our early development impacting our sensibilities so much is to wonder, why are some people and a lot of people so overly fixated on dynamics that happened when they were in high school, in earlier life? Why, many people still refer to the dynamics between their family, their siblings, and their parents as helping to explain current behavior patterns. And this is not vilifying that. I'm just pointing out why this initial 25-year period is of such high impact. So how does this work? So let's talk about the tangle. Boop. So our early experiences and circumstances, they shape the reflexes of our nervous system. And those reflexes are subconscious responses that we attach to belief systems to rationalize them. So it's like, I'm just this way. This is just how I am, or I'm this way because the world is this way, or I'm this way because so we create reality from our belief systems around these reflexes that are patterned and trained into our bodies and our body mind, rather, early in life, before we had the ability to actually remember things effectively, remember how they were formed. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. And then that reality that we've created, we project out into the world. And then we project what we expect, and then the world responds accordingly as validation, which strengthens our sense of what reality is. So we project these experiences and belief systems out into the world, and the world reacts back to us based on what we put out there. And then as a result of that, we come to really believe that this sense of life is truly fixed. So I'm just going to take a little pause, take a little breather. So let's talk about these early circumstances and experiences. Now, I'm going to show you a special little diagram that I made for you, which is to demonstrate, or actually illustrate rather, the chronology of the creation of, or even the shaping rather, of our hubs. So just a reminder, when we're born, we are on what could basically be called a developmental roadmap. So we're born with primarily reflexes and the potential for what will ultimately become our fully formed nervous system. So as an infant, what we come into the world, and actually rather I'd say as an infant, and this is the period of gestation, late in the gestation, in the womb, in utero, and then early infant into the first 6 to 9 months of life, where we are just establishing a very deep core sensibility about how safe the world is physically. So this is where we create, or where it was created, we co-created this survival, trust, and sense of safety that we have in the world. And then and I won't go through all of these, I'm just going to talk through the first three. Then as we, is in the first year of life or so as a baby, we start to attune with our caregivers and we start to learn how to emotionally communicate before there's language. And so by doing that, we're learning that when our responses receive an appropriate reaction and vice versa, that we learn how to sync up and attune with the world around us. And by doing that, we build a trust in our emotional literacy and we build emotional capacity. And this is so greatly affected by our maternal relationship and specifically the closest ring of caregivers who how responsive they are with us. Certainly we go into this a lot more in throughout the book, but also, so to continue on, once in the toddler era, very famous for being terrible twos and being where a child begins to assert themselves. This is where individuation, power, and autonomy start to emerge, and how that is patterned and created in the earliest years of life shapes our relationship with that sense of ourselves and who we are. So we look to that with like were we shamed? Where, was it too much? Because sometimes it's a lot. And also were boundaries put in place that were appropriate, that taught us to handle power in a way that was respectful to our dignity and our identity, but also respectful to the identity and individuality of others. And then we move into early childhood. And this is in our early life was when we started to actually be interested in playing with other kids. So there's a marked change and a shift when a child is entering like early school years and preschool, kindergarten, where they start to be more interested in playing with others. And this is where the foundation of relationships and connections with others and self begins to really begins to establish itself. And then, of course, we won't cover these today, but we move on to late childhood where we're learning and establishing communication, creativity, and expression. And then into adolescence, which is really a lot about like our vision, ideas, focus, things that are arising from us that are really unique to our experience and our perception. And then into early adulthood, which is the prefrontal cortex, which is the most advanced function of our cognition, which is intelligence, information, belief systems, and just knowledge in general. So I would ask how you're doing right now, because this is a pretty heavy-handed, full-on educational session. So I'd love to know how you're doing so far with this. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. I will respond to any comments, now and in the future. I really appreciate any interaction that we have here. So now that we're talking about these functions that are chronologically developed within ourselves, there's also a component of these functions rather. We call them hubs in Parinama because they're kind of a consolidation of behaviors, feelings, and even like beliefs and thoughts around them. So to the point of the shadow is that as this aspect of our lived experience begins to emerge, like think of the shadows, and we'll talk about what they are. Let me have I popped them up yet? Let me pull them full in. Think of the shadows as protections of these aspects of ourselves that are naturally arising dynamic responses. These naturally and organic responses, like they're a form of almost like a justice that's baked into our human nature. So when you think about building the sense of physical security, fear is a natural response that attempts to restore safety, to return us to a place where we will be at least perceived, but certainly the intention is to move us to safety. Now, as a acute, naturally arising phenomenon, fear actually works. It actually alerts us so that we take action, and it alerts a part of our nervous system that is like sub to unconscious, which is we jump out of harm's way, or we eat when we're hungry, or we put on a sweater if we're cold. It's this aspect of ourselves that's unconscious, that operates extraordinary a level of like the functions in our lives. And fear is, when it's acute, it's actually just, it takes action. When it becomes chronic and fixed, this is when it becomes maladaptive, and that shows up as hypervigilance. So if we have a sense that the world actually isn't safe, and by the way, the world isn't safe, but do you have the ability to feel safe within your body? Do you have the ability to feel safe when there isn't an imminent threat? And so what we do with Parinama is we're really looking at how do we cultivate and restore the ability to feel safe within our bodies, while also acknowledging that the reality of being alive is that it involves some danger and some risks, and the fact that bad things happen. But if we have something very deep inside of us that is that's sensing that it needs to protect us, that the sense of fear winds up being a really pervasive aspect of our day-to-day lived experience. So that shadow, so there's always there tends to be this conflicted relationship with these shadows, which is like fear. Am I supposed to have no fear? Of what is, feel the fear and do it anyway, or, be fearless or whatever. I'm presenting a different take on this, that fear as an acute, organic, naturally arising response is extraordinary. And as a adaptation to I'm not even going to say to what, we'll get into that. As an adaptation, as hypervigilance, as anxiety, that fear is actually maladaptive. And when we work with it, we assuage, is that how you say it? Assuage. And we start to be able to transform what it feels like to exist within our body. So a couple other examples of shadows are as protections is that what guilt does is guilt is actually a function of reacting to feeling bad about doing something. So when we're guilty about things like, what we eat, or feeling embarrassed about saying something stupid, we really crowd out the true nature of guilt, which is a remediation, which is a corrective mechanism to make right and make good with people if we've done something wrong. Same to a certain extent with shame. Shame is used and over abused to act, as a disciplinary measure, and then it becomes all consuming. Anger is another example of a shadow, which is such an important shadow. And I'm going to pop this up into like the corner here. Hi, I'm back. So I'm trying to figure out the angle here. So I think I'm a little too close right now. So anger is the naturally arising response to having our dignity and integrity suppressed or undermined. So thinking about it, it's like, how much is anger and frustration about not feeling respected? And how that exerts a rage is to feel like your humanity and the expression of what you think, what you feel, who you want to be, that when that is diminished or undermined, that there's a naturally occurring response to that that wants to push back. And so my case here with the shadows is that what the shadows are doing is they're actually this very important part of the expression of our integrity when they are actually um, moved into their appropriate playing position of being acute rather than chronic. So being angry all the time at everything is an adaptation, and it also has to do with not being able to appropriately express anger to the stimulus or even reconcile a previous experience that is related to what made us angry to begin with. So we can, and so as we'll progress in the practice, we'll do a deeper dive into each of these aspects of ourselves. And and I think that, like, one way to look at it, so one thought I'd had was fear. Like, think about feeling fear and think about what the message that it has for you is. And so fear is, I'll keep you safe. Guilt is, I'll keep you connected. Because most guilt has to do with being exiled, like not fitting in anymore. Like when you really like connect it back. And shame is, I'll keep you from causing harm. And I'll protect you. Shame, I'm actually going to change shame. I'm going to say shame is, I will protect you. I'll protect your integrity. Nobody's going to, no, like nobody's going to put you down. It's like the big sibling inside of you. And anger, yeah, anger. I will uphold your dignity. I don't know if I got this right. Shame. I don't know. Just a thought. So, how are we doing on time here? So I keep like moving. I need to figure out the placement on this. I think I can move aside a little bit here. So my goal is to make these sessions, and I'm just going to pop this out a little bit more so you can see it one more time. And my goal is to make these sessions relatively quick so that they can fit in with a daily life and a contemplation practice. If you want to read more about the shadows, page 33 in the Parinama method has the breakdown of each of the shadows and what they specifically represent. So, was it page 33? Look, did I get that right? I'm just looking right now. Yes, ma'am. All right, page 33. And if you are looking to find a Parinama method, take a look at the website, theparinamamethod.com. You can learn a bit more about the overarching notion of what Parinama is, where you can either download a copy or get a copy. And under the deluxe edition is a more elaborate breakdown on what Parinama method actually is and what is included in the book. So take a peek there if you want to dive a little bit deeper and go a little bit faster than where we're going. As far as a reading from the book, so for today, so page 4 in the very beginning of the book, I'm going to take the website down here, is our little friend here, big friend rather. This is a big friend. I don't know if the it just, I think my head is so big it doesn't really do any compare it. It's not like putting a quarter next to the book. When other people hold it, it's like you can really, I tend to be able to tell that how much larger it is. But so on page 4, Dabrowski's theory of positive disintegration is that if feelings of fear, anxiety, worthlessness, low energy, or pain are getting in your way, Consider psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski's theory of positive disintegration. So, Dabrowski developed the theory to explain how a person's difficult experiences can result in important personal development. The disintegration he referred to is a forcing function for surrender and the abandoning of behaviors, patterns, and attitudes that are blocking us from our true self. The resulting shift is regarded as positive because we increase our capacity to contain such experiences, gaining greater perspective, insight, and wisdom. This disintegration can be the falling away of defenses and survival adaptations, those behavior patterns formed early in life that once protected you but no longer serve you. It's a difficult process to endure in the short term, but holding on to these stockpiled experiences ultimately hurts worse in the long term. So I'm really, I can't stop. Ah. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so positive disintegration. So this session, the takeaway from this session is that I'm building the case for having a better relationship with yourself and ourselves, rather, we're doing this together, where you are on your side and you're understanding that the qualities that you may have maligned or feel shame about or feel that separate you and make you somehow suboptimal, that these are actually very natural things, and that when we can reduce shame and resistance with them, but we can work with ourselves in a really different way. So as a closing exercise, I just want to have our back and just do a quick scan where we bring our attention to the bottoms of our feet, and then we travel to the backs of our heels, and then up through the backs of our legs to our calves. Just tune in to the backs of your knees as you travel up through your hamstrings. And just notice your bum, any sensation if you're sitting, what you can feel there. Travel up to the lower back, mid back. Now the shoulder blades. Just look a little into the backs of your arms. And now we look to the back of your neck. And just kind of noticing and bringing our attention. So you travel up to the back of our head. And then right up to the top of our head. Just take a moment to settle in with what it feels like to have your back, to assume positive intent with yourself first. And as we work in the Parinama method, we continue to deepen this capacity in this practice. And what this unlocks is the ability to live in a way that is fuller, more fulfilling, more aligned with purpose, and just more joyful, with greater capacity. And so with that being said, in the next session, what we will be talking about is nervous system capacity and a little bit about the functioning of how Parinama method works. If you want a little sneak peek, you can look at the website. But if not, if you can wait, Tuesday at 8 o'clock, I will see you here. I just want to say that my one recommendation, the low, no cost recommendation for the day, is gua sha. If you want to just create some circulation, feels really nice on the face. I'm not doing this on the right side. You don't need one of these really expensive ones. You could, I think this one's like kind of $70 or $80, not necessary. But it's just a nice way to kind of pamper yourself a little bit and kind of move some circulation in your face. So I did it this morning. I want to share it with you. So thank you so much for coming along. I am sending you so much love and appreciation, and I can't wait until we see each other next time. Bye for now.